I am muted. Welcome in, everybody, for the Chicago Bears podcast, which is actually on my Alexis Jade YouTube channel right now because I am having issues with live streaming from the Chicago Bears. So this is just what it's going to be right now. But apologies for getting started a few minutes late here. I was having some technical issues I was trying to work through, and I didn't 100% get them solved, full disclosure. So if there's some technical difficulties throughout this thing, my apologies, but let me know if you have any issues hearing or seeing. But regardless, let's just dive into it. Welcome into the Chicago Bears. We are going to get started. We have obviously some breaking news here today with the Bears having a new OC hiring. So we are going to get into that. But we have the first guest on the Chicago Bears podcast. So we have the guys from the Willis Twin Towers, which is on the Barroom Network on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, you guys need to go check it out. I was a guest on both the Barroom Network on one of their shows, as well as on the Willis Twin Towers show. So I've been a guest 2 times on their show, and it was only fair that I bring them on to let them rant on my channel as well. So we will be bringing them on here in a sec to talk the Bears and the new OC hiring. But just a real quick recap. Obviously, the Bears fired Luke Getsy about, 13, 14 days ago, something like that. And now the Bears have already hired a new OC in Shane Waldron, formerly from the Seattle Seahawks. And the Bears are obviously not in the playoffs. So we are in postseason mode. We have a big decision to make at QB1. We have a lot going on here. This is also, I think, the second Chicago Bears live podcast. So here we go. We already have the F Green Bay comments. So we're off to a good start. So I figure let's not stall any longer. Without further ado, let's bring in our guests and start talking this OC decision with the Chicago Bears. So bringing to the stage, we got Jeff and we got Tim from the Willis Twin Towers podcast. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good, Alexis. Appreciate you having us on. It was nice having you on our channel. So, yeah, it should be a good time tonight talking this new OC here.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for coming on again and letting us all rant together again. It's going to be a good time, I think. I think we all have some pretty strong opinions in terms of the OC hire, but also in terms of some reactions to the OC hire. So I guess I'll start with, what were your guys' initial reactions when the Bears announced earlier this morning, that they were hiring Shane Waldron from the Seattle Seahawks, the current OC there, as the new OC for the Chicago Bears?
Well, I'll go ahead and start because Jeff was still asleep when Shane Waldron was hired this morning because Jeff lives over on the West Coast. But I was excited, super excited, because if I had to choose candidates, he would have been my number 2 option to begin with. And I knew my original number 1 was Pep Hamilton. And I knew that wasn't going to be realistic once I realized they were only looking for guys that have familiarity with the Shanahan-McVay tree. So, yeah, he was definitely my number 1 choice of those guys. He's got the most experience as a play caller, has a lot of success with quarterbacks, especially what he did with Geno Smith is something to be marveled at. And the offense was never stagnant in Seattle. So, yeah, I really like the hire.
Yeah, like Tim said, I was actually asleep when it first happened this morning because I am on the West Coast, but I was getting notifications all over the place, and I got a text from Tim saying that Waldron was getting hired because I think it started happening at like 6 or 7 Chicago time this morning. They made it happen right away. So it was very early for me when it happened. But as Tim said, he was actually my favorite of all the candidates from the get-go. Tim and I have talked a lot about Pep Hamilton on our pod, if you guys haven't heard in the past. But, I did like him. But, as soon as Waldron became available, that was like right away for me. Like, that's the guy. This guy's got experience calling plays. As a successful play caller, he's developed a quarterback who has not had a ton of success in the league and was labeled as a bust in Geno Smith. He's made the most of the opportunities that he has had with the personnel that he has. The one slight that I would say you could really have against him this year with developing players was Jackson Smith and Jigba really didn't get going until late in the season. He really didn't produce a ton. But outside of that, I felt like he did a pretty good job of getting the playmakers that he had in Seattle involved where he could. So I feel like he did a good job there. I feel like he's got experience all over the place under multiple head coaches like Belichick and Pete Carroll, obviously, and some other guys like that. So I just think this is it's a home run slam dunk hire for the Bears in the direction they're trying to go with teaching guys and things of that nature.
I agree. And sorry for there's a lot of chaos clearly happening on my screen here. The cats are all over the place because they just got fed and they're on their Zoomy mission. So if we see some other cat ears, just don't be surprised. But also, if it looks like I'm looking down, it's because my camera's up here, but you guys are down here. So I'm trying to adjust my eyesight here. But yeah, I agree. I think it was a really good hire by the Bears. And he was also one of my top candidates. The other one was Kubiak from the 49ers, but I like that Waldron had more play calling experience, and he also had the proof of developing someone like Geno Smith. He also worked with Jared Goff. So I agree. And I think most Bears fans' reactions were positive to the news. I saw very few people that were like really upset that the Bears hired him. What I was surprised by was some of the former reporters and such for the Seahawks that were not big fans of him. And I listened to an interview today, and they were saying that, the offense regressed, and Geno Smith should take a lot of the credit for him improving when Shane was the OC. And I kind of am curious if that's almost biased, kind of like how Bears fans are like, it's not Justin Fields, it's the offensive coordinator. But obviously, it's two entirely different situations. But I was surprised by the Seahawks' perspective of him. And my question for you is, have you heard that? Either one of you, if you want to answer, have you heard that? Or is that something you're concerned about, that maybe we're not seeing the red flags in this candidate?
I mean, yeah, I did hear about that. I think it's a bunch of nonsense, more likely, in my opinion. And, they may have talked about Geno Smith's regression from year one to year two in that system. But at the same time, what was Geno Smith before year one? A bust that everybody had counted him out. So sure, there's going to be some regression, most likely. There always is. Every time there's always success, there's always usually a little bit of regression, more times than not. And that's, teams figure it out a little bit when they're defending you. That's part of the NFL. It's who can make the adjustments and when, and can you adjust to the new thing? Look at the Wildcat years ago. That was great, and it was tearing the league up, and then everybody figured it out, and that's just part of the sport. That's how it goes. So who's to say there's regression under Waldron, or if this was just regression of the offense because teams have now seen Geno Smith and they started figuring it out a little bit. Who knows? But at the same time, like I don't pay much attention to it because of what I've seen him do in the 3 years that he's been there. He's had success with both quarterbacks, with him and with Russell Wilson. So I don't pay any attention to it. I still love the hire. If you're asking me, would I take what they did in Seattle over what we did here? Yeah, I would in a heartbeat. So I don't pay any mind to it. Everybody's going to have their opinions on things. There were some people screaming for Luke Getsy, and it's the nature of the beast. Not everybody's going to be happy, and it's going to be the same thing with the whole quarterback scenario. So again, not everybody's going to be happy, but I like the hire personally.
Yeah, I think as far as like the Seattle fans and some of their media being not big fans of Waldron, I think you could say that about just about every fan base and media, but like 4 or 5 teams that don't like their offensive coordinator or their defensive coordinator, even their head coach for a lot of those. So it's like, a lot of that is just negativity because they want to be better. They want more for their team. But on top of that, I was watching an interview on Hogan Johns earlier that they had with a writer for The Athletic in Seattle for the Seahawks. And he was mentioning about the fact that they'd gone through like double digits in offensive line combinations throughout the season. So that had a lot to do with their inconsistency offensively and the fact that they just couldn't protect Geno very well either. So when that's an issue, when you don't have protection, you're getting beat in the trenches, it's going to derail your offensive play, regardless of what's going on around with the skill players and the quarterback. You know, the same thing on the defensive side of the ball. If you're getting beat in the trenches, you're not generating any kind of pass rush or any kind of push in the run game, you're going to get beat in the secondary all day long. It's just the way it goes. So, in my opinion, I feel like sure there's going to be some issues with play calling here and there. And another person who was talking about this, and mostly on Twitter is where I saw this, was Brad Spielberger, was talking about how he struggles with his play calling with third down conversion rate, red zone conversion rate, and things of that nature, but he's excellent on first and second down. So with his play calling, that is. So my only concern would be that is, you know, like the 2-minute situation, the red zone situation, things of that nature. You know, we want to be able to convert in those areas, and how much of that had to do with the fact that, you know, on third down, a lot of times those are obvious passing situations. Is it because the offensive line wasn't holding up? So to me, a lot of that, there's a lot of factors at play there, but from the overall body of work, from the resume he's got on hand, the fact like I said, he is a successful and established NFL play caller already. It's a good hire. And regardless of what anybody in the media is saying in Seattle, and the fans for that matter, they're fans. That's what fans do. They're negative. So pretty much everybody else on the outside likes the hire. So I like it. And I like from what I've seen anyway. So that's just my take on it.
No, I agree. And I saw that same interview you mentioned, and it seemed like they were even surprised that the reporter from the Seahawks, like they were like, it seems like everyone else besides you guys seem to like him. So are you sure about that? But I agree. And Lord knows the Bears know all about not having a solid offensive line and how that can affect your third down and your 2-minute drills and everything else. So yeah, I think I'm sure there's going to be things he does or calls he makes or whatever that we're going to be like, why did he do that? But I think if you compare it to what we had before in Luke Getsy, it's for sure an upgrade. And for me, at least, my number one criteria as playing GM was he needs to have play calling experience, because Luke Getsy had the right idea with certain concepts he was trying to make happen. He just didn't know how to execute them properly with his personnel, and he didn't know how to adjust in game, and he didn't know how to scheme appropriately and find a balanced attack between the rushing, the passing, Justin Fields' abilities, and incorporating all his playmakers. So this guy, Shane Waldron, can do all of that, and he's proven he can do all that. So I think that's a huge hire. And now what comes into question is, was this a hire for Caleb Williams or was this a hire for Justin Fields? And of course, I think that there's no obvious answer, because I even tweeted this. I think it's about as neutral of a hire as you could have possibly gotten in the best way. I think they hired him because he clearly probably had the best answer for what would you do with this quarterback? What would you do with this one? What would you do with this one? Like, I think he clearly found ways to be able to adjust his offensive scheme and play calling for whoever the quarterback is going to be. And I did see, I was surprised to see how many people took to Twitter to then say that, like, he was part of the QB collective. So that means Caleb Williams is for sure going to be the quarterback here. And one, Justin Fields is the poster child for QB collective. So that's just out the window. And two, saying that, you know, the only reason he would want to come here is because we have the number one pick. So he would obviously only, because he's currently an OC, right? He's not getting a promotion by coming here. And people saying the only reason he would want to come here is because we have the number one pick. So he would get to work with the newest, hottest quarterback coming in. So that means the Bears are obviously drafting Caleb Williams. And I think people forget that the Bears are in a great situation. Like, we're a team who has the number one pick this year because of Carolina. Like, we were a 7-win team this year. We have a great defense that's coming too. We have a really good salary cap situation. We have draft capital galore, especially if we traded the number one pick. And we have a team that's on the rise, and we have a quarterback that you don't necessarily have to get rid of. Like, we have a good quarterback that you can develop that he's proven to. So I've said my piece in a more mellow way than I was yelling at my TV this morning. But, Tim, I know you had some feelings about about some of the comments made. So what was your take on some of the responses on who this OC was hired for at quarterback?
Well, I'll start by saying I don't think he was hired for anybody, because that, you said it best, when they hired. First of all, I'm going to shut this down pretty quickly. when they are interviewing these candidates, if any of them were to say, well, you can do this with this quarterback, but this quarterback can't work here, they're not going to hire that guy. If you can't say, I can make it work with this guy and I can make it work with this guy, you're not the right guy for the job. Because that says, okay, well, I may be comfortable in my own offense and my own scheme, but that doesn't mean I can work with any quarterback that you bring in here. And they have to know, like, hey, if my quarterback goes down, backup quarterback comes in, can you right the ship and still make this work? And if they brought in any coordinator that would have said, no, it's not going to work with him, but it would work with him, they were never going to get that job. So that negates that argument to begin with. He was not brought in there for any certain quarterback. Now, for anybody to say that he was brought in for Caleb Williams to begin with, again, with the collective QB thing, not true. Justin Fields was also one of those quarterbacks, like you said. That's out the gate. Number two, this is where I kind of lean that this is more of a Justin Fields hire. Now, again, I don't think it was any specifics, which one or the other. Again, I think it was you have to be able to have a game plan for both. And I feel like most likely Waldron gave him the answer of the best option for either quarterback. Like, I can do this with Justin. I can do this with Caleb. You can win with both guys. I think he was probably the one that had the best answer as far as what he could do with either quarterback. But what is Waldron known most recently for? Completely turning around a guy who was not thought to be, was by all accounts a complete bust in the NFL. Maybe a few good games here and there. The guy hadn't attempted more than 100 passes in a season in his career until he came to Seattle. And he completely turned around his career. Shane Waldron completely turned around Geno Smith's career. And they were a playoff team last year. I mean, it's not, this isn't something that can be taken lightly. And if you look at it, when you compare Justin with Geno Smith as far as raw talent, tools, and ability, it's not even close. Geno doesn't hold a candle to what Justin Fields can do. So to me, it's the ultimate test as an offensive coordinator to come into Chicago, into this system, to say, hey, this is why I should be a head coach. Everybody keeps saying, you know, he's doing this to get the number one pick so that they can draft Caleb Williams and he can develop a rookie quarterback and go get a head coaching job. You're telling me that's more alluring than a team looking and saying, wow, you came in there with Justin Fields, you created a playoff, or you turned them into a playoff team on offense, and maybe Justin is an MVP candidate. That is screaming head coaching opportunity, more so to me than even rookie quarterback, because I think there's a lot of teams where Caleb Williams could go in with certain OCs and have success, most likely, depending on, you know, the character and things like that. You just don't know. But skill set wise, there's a lot of teams that could probably use him. We haven't seen that with Justin Fields, where offensive coordinators can make it work with him. Not saying that he doesn't have an elite talent that could be, they just haven't. If you can come into Chicago and you can make this work with Justin Fields as the offensive coordinator, you can make a playoff, maybe win some playoff games, push him into that perennial MVP conversation. You're looking for it. You're getting a head coaching opportunity. It's going to happen.
Well, I would just say I agree with your first point that, you know, I don't think they hired Waldron for any quarterback. They hired him because that's the system that Eberflus wants to run. He wanted to run it when he first got there, but unfortunately, he just didn't run it very well. That was the problem. So in essence, the system is still that Shanahan-McVay offense. You know, the terminology, I assume, would be similar, and they'll run a lot of the same similar concepts. But I've also heard from watching other people talk about this that he does have some interesting wrinkles of his own, Waldron. So as far as, like I said, as far as why they brought him in, I don't think it's for any particular quarterback. I think it was because that's the offense that Flus wants to run. And, you know, it's no coincidence to me that just about every candidate they interviewed was out of that tree, except for like Greg Roman, even Kingsbury, I believe, as a disciple of the Shanahan tree. So, you know, and the reason to me that they would interview either one of those guys is because, you know, Greg Roman is going to show you what he can do with Fields, and Kingsbury is going to say, well, here's the intel I can give you on Williams, and this is how I would run the offense with either guy you have. So they're going to interview both those guys for those reasons, in my opinion. So, and also there was a report that Zach Robinson finished as the runner-up for what it's worth. He's the pass game coordinator for the Rams. So they chose Waldron. Like I said, I like it, and I don't think it has anything to do with the quarterback. I think it's because, like I said, that's just the offense that they want to run, and they think he's going to run it a lot better than Getsy did. We've seen that he can run it a lot better than Getsy did.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. Like I said earlier, I don't think that they hired any specific coordinator for any specific quarterback. I really genuinely do not think they have a decision made yet. They might be leaning one way or the other, but I don't think a decision has been made. And I think you can make an argument for both sides that, the having the number one pick, and if someone is really sold on Caleb Williams, like, who knows? Maybe Shane Waldron loves Caleb Williams. Is like, I really hope I work with him. But, knowing Ryan Poles, he definitely didn't go in there and tell him, like, well, guess what, buddy? We're drafting him. Like, he went in there and said, hey, are you willing to work with Justin Fields? Do you think you can do what you did for Geno Smith? And do you think you can turn him around? Or, not turn him around. Justin Fields isn't in the bust category. He's a starting quarterback. He just needs development. But, yeah, I think it's interesting to see, obviously, what the QB decision will end up being. And Lord knows that's a whole conversation this offseason that's going to happen. But do you think that that Shane will now have a hand in the decision of who the Bears draft at the quarterback? Because I personally would imagine that obviously the Bears wanted to hire Quick because he was a high candidate and they wanted him, but also because they want their QB and their OC to be on the same page. And if they do keep Fields, get Fields that playbook as fast as you can, so he has as much time as possible to learn that playbook. So, like, do you guys think that the OC will have a hand in helping make the decision of who the quarterback will be, or do you think that will rely solely on Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus and maybe Kevin Warren?
You go ahead, Jeff. You take this one, and I'll follow you up.
Well, I would just say that, first of all, I do expect him to, I mean, I could be wrong about this part, but I would expect just about the entire team is going to get the playbook right now. They're going to get it to everybody and get them learning it as soon as they can, Justin included, because just in case, whether or not they stick with him or not, I'm sure they're going to want him to learn what's going on here. It's not really going to hurt if he starts to dig into this playbook and then go somewhere else, because he's going to have to learn another offense anyways. So that being said, I think that Waldron will come in right away and he will begin to jump in with these guys, the other coaches and the executives, with the evaluation of these quarterbacks in the draft. And Justin, they're going to be evaluating everything. And so I think that he'll dig in and evaluate with them. He'll give his grades. They'll give their grades. And I think they'll end up coming to a consensus one way or the other, whether they draft a quarterback or whether they stick with Justin. I think this is really an interesting offseason, guys, if anybody doesn't already know that. I mean, we have an opportunity here for something really, really special to happen one way or the other, because if they do go quarterback, you're talking about a guy that a lot of people are very, very, very high on in Caleb Williams. And if they decide to stick with Justin, who a lot of us love and would love to see in Chicago still, and they trade down, you're talking about accruing a ton of capital. And Poles has shown an ability to nail on some of those early draft picks. I mean, Darnell Wright, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker. These guys were all early draft picks who were all playing big roles for this football team. So, in my opinion, I think he will jump in right away and start the evaluation process on the other quarterbacks with the other coaches and executives, and also on Justin. But I do think that the playbook is going to go out to the players right away if they can. I would imagine that's what they'll do.
Yeah, I think he will have some say so. Coaches play a big role in the players that are brought in, like evaluating who's coming in and who's not. Now, the GM or whoever's making football decisions is going to typically make the final decision, but I do think that he's going to have some say so. I don't think that it's going to be what a lot of people think it's going to be in the early rounds or like first round pick. I don't see it happening. I really don't. And you said earlier that you don't think the decision's made, but I think it's all but made. That's where I think it's at. And I could be totally wrong on that. It's just the way I feel that way just based on what I've heard from them They're all high on Fields, whether or not they said, he's the guy or not. They didn't say he wasn't the guy, for one. And two, they'd never really, they said things when they didn't have to say things. And that speaks volumes to me. So, I don't think a decision's made up completely, but I think it's all but made up, meaning they're leaning hard one way. And I have a feeling that way is towards Justin, especially to me. The Waldron hire kind of leans that way to me too. Do I think that he was hired because of that? No, we discussed that earlier, but at the same time, I think it does kind of lean one way, that's the way they're going. But again, I don't know that. And I do think he's going to have some say so in who the quarterback is. I do think they're going to draft a quarterback. I just don't know that it's going to be in one of the first 2 picks, or even maybe not until later on in the draft. But I do think they're definitely going to trade down at some point and pick up a number 2. They have to. That's where they've hit. They've hit very strong in the second round in both of Poles' years, or both of Poles' first 2 years in Chicago.
Yeah, and that kind of what you said leads me into my final question, I guess, because I know you guys have to go soon. But I think when talking about whether the OC came here for the number 1 pick or not, you can debate that all day long if you want. But the idea that it doesn't also appeal to have Justin Fields as the quarterback already established, it's not a rookie you have to work with. It's a guy who can read NFL defenses. And you also then trade that number 1 pick for draft capital and know you're getting an influx of rookie talent coming in on top of free agency. And I just think that for me is one of the one things that's hard for me to envision. Like, I can see it going either way. I can see them drafting Caleb Williams, and I can see them keeping Justin Fields. But the thing that makes it difficult but also frustrating hearing some people, especially other media reporters and such, talk about how, Caleb Williams is the for sure best direction to go for the team, because I don't see how that's a foregone conclusion. Like, I don't see how Caleb Williams equals 100% going to transition to the NFL and succeed. I don't see how his ceiling and his floor even is automatically better than Justin Fields. And that's not to discredit Caleb Williams, because I think there's definitely qualities in him that I see why he's the most likely number 1 pick. But we also know what Ryan Poles said in the presser, which is, it's not just the tape, it's the character. And we all know that at least when it comes down to Justin Fields, the person, player aside, they love Justin Fields. The coaches do, the front office does, the locker room does. Like, I think in order for them to move off of Justin Fields and for Poles to then also want to get rid of all that draft capital, he has to know he's getting something for sure in Caleb Williams that he really, really sees. And also, the Bears only have the first round pick, number 9 in the first round. And then after that, we don't pick again till the 3rd round pick, number 75. And I know that if Ian Cunningham gets hired somewhere else and Justin Fields is traded, we maybe get a 2nd round or 2 this year. But I don't think that's enough for Ryan Poles. Like, Ryan Poles likes to load up on draft capital. So I just think that there's a lot more holes in this roster that, especially if you want to start paying people, that you're going to have to pay with that free agency and everything else. I don't know. I don't think it's as clear cut as some people are making it seem, but that's just my opinion. But before you guys go, I do want to know your thoughts on where do you think the Bears are leaning for the QB decision, and where are you personally leaning?
Well, I would just say, so first of all, you mentioned something about some coordinators not wanting to work with Justin or something like that. I believe you said something along those lines, but I would say that 90+% of the coordinators in this league would look at, or even any offensive coach in the league would look at Justin and say, I can turn that talent into an MVP, because he hasn't been coached very well. And he does have talent that you just cannot coach. He has ability to break tackles in the pocket that cannot be coached. His ability to run downhill in the open field as a quarterback cannot be coached. These are things, the way he can throw the ball down the field, not a lot of quarterbacks can do that. He's a very, very, very accurate downfield passer. There's a lot of things in his game that not a lot of other guys can do. He's got the arm to make all the throws. So to me, you look at it, and yeah, Caleb has a lot of those things too. You look at Caleb and you say he's got all the arm talent in the world. He's got all the athletic ability in the world. And a lot of offensive coordinators, a lot of offensive coaches, just like Justin, would look at that guy and say, wow, I can turn him into a star. So I don't think, again, I don't think it's really about that. But that being said, that it's going to go into what Ryan Pohl's been talking about in the past, the person, the football character. And in my opinion, it's going to come down to whether or not Caleb Williams or any of the other top quarterback prospects has both that on-field talent that surpasses anybody else, and they have this football obsession, this desire to be the best, the greatest, to grind out the hard hours of tape that nobody else wants to do, to put in the summer work that nobody else wants to do. And we know Justin Fields does those things because he's been doing it in Chicago for 3 years now. We know how much he loves the game. We know how much his teammates appreciate him and love him. It's been happening all over Twitter. We're seeing guys repost stuff. Jaquan Brisker, DeMarcus Walker, they're all saying things on Twitter about how much they feel about, or what they feel about Justin Fields. DeMarcus Walker said, imagine if somebody could develop him, he'd be like Lamar Jackson. And, you know, that, what does that tell you? These guys have faith in their quarterback. Now, they're going to dig into this for the draft with these other quarterbacks, and they're going to see how their teammates feel about them and how they're invested into football and how much time they spend in it and how much they really love it. And they will find these things out. They're good at this stuff. And if look, they passed on George Pickens in the draft. They passed on Jalen Carter, and that one was a little more obvious. But these things happen. You know, they're good about finding out your character, in specific your football character. And if they see there's a stark difference between Justin Fields' overall combination of talent and their confidence they can develop him more, and his football character as opposed to those other quarterbacks, I think it's a pretty obvious decision to make at that point. But here's the problem, though. We don't know what their football character is like. Some of them there's been high regard about, like J.J. McCarthy, but I don't think he's got top-end talent. Is he a guy they could draft? Possibly, but I think he's going in the first round. So they would have to move down and take a guy like that. And honestly, you use a first-round pick on a quarterback and you keep Justin Fields, the writing's on the wall for him. You know he's pretty much out the door in a year, maybe even 2. Depends on the situation. But really, in my opinion, like I said, if the overall combination of talent on the field, your confidence that you can continue to make him grow, and his football character is staunchly different from the quarterbacks in the draft, they're going to trade down and keep Fields. And in my opinion, I think his combination is enough to where they will stick with him.
So I've been trying not to fall under the trap of have my heart tell me where I think they're going, because I think a lot of people have used this whole, they want Caleb Williams so badly that they're trying to come up with any narrative in their mind that says, yep, that's the direction the Bears are going. And I feel like a lot of people did this with the Shane Waldron hire, and it's like, there's nothing in this hire that tells me that it's for sure going towards Caleb Williams. And I heard it at least 10 times today where people said that if this doesn't point that they're going with Caleb Williams, then I don't know what does. Well, I don't see that. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm trying not to do that. But at the same time, my heart and my mind both tell me that they're going in the direction of Fields. And there's just too many things that they've said. There's too much writing on the walls that just leans towards Justin. It just does. And we're talking about football character. We don't know what his character is like, Caleb Williams, but at the same time, we've seen some of the antics and things, and it's hard to say that without knowing him. It's who knows what that's really like, but those things are kind of questionable from the outside looking in. Now, I know the Bears are going to do their homework and they're going to find out exactly what this kid's all about, but who knows? We just don't know until the time comes. But I just, what we do know is Justin's character. We know his football character. We know his love for football. And how many times has Ryan Poles said, even in the end of season press conference, that's half the battle. Half of the evaluation is the character and the football character and the love for football. And if that's half the battle and talent is half the battle, then to me, it's Caleb Williams better have a lot of talent over Justin Fields if that's going to be half the evaluation. Because I can tell you right now that as far as football character goes, there's no way Caleb Williams has more football character than Justin Fields does. I won't believe that. There's no way. So,
well, real quick before just one last point I want to make. even if his talent level is like far superior to Fields, and I shouldn't say far superior because it's not, but even if they saw it as like it's a pretty far bar between the two, and his football character is like night and day from Fields, they're not going to take that risk because they know they can't mold a guy like that. He can't reach his potential because he doesn't have the desire to reach his potential. He has to want to be great. He has to want to be the best. And if they don't see that, it's not going to happen.
I agree. And I think, the polls and the front office deciding to fire Luke Getsy, and they didn't just fire him during that presser. They really called him out. Like, I don't even know. Some of it might have not even been fair how much they called him out. I think it was, but up to interpretation. But I mean, they really harped in on like the offense was not good because the offense was not being used properly. And they emphasized we want to hire an OC who can adjust to their quarterback. So like it's odd, like Ryan Poles isn't dumb. He sees everything we see. So when it comes down to the decision, if he really is in love with Caleb Williams, he will draft him. Like I'm trying to be as unbiased as much as I think Fields should stay and is the best answer. I will still root for Caleb Williams if he's here. But Ryan Poles also knows what Fields has been through these 3 years. And he has not been, as we all know and we've all emphasized, he's not been put in a good situation. And Justin Fields went from being in college and winning being the culture. Like he won all the time. And then he came to the NFL, to the Chicago Bears, in one of the hardest cities in the NFL to be a quarterback, if not the hardest city, because we don't ever have one. And he took all the losses, and he didn't just take them in stride, but he took them with, like, he put it on his shoulders. Even when he was a rookie, everything that went wrong, he put on his shoulders. And then all the way up through this year when they even started winning, and there was the Tyson Bagent controversy, and now there's the whole offseason. 2 years in a row, he's had to deal with offseason talks of them drafting another quarterback. Like, if that doesn't show how much of a team dude he is, I don't know what does. And I know Ryan Poles sees that. And I think when you're a GM and you're looking for the leader of your team, the one who represents the franchise, moving off of that is incredibly hard, especially when you see his talents and you see the, like you guys said, that throws downfield, the things he does that athletically no other quarterback besides maybe Lamar Jackson can do. I think it's a harder decision than people are giving it. Now that the distance has come from the end of season, I think people are starting to get enamored by the draft again and start to lean towards Williams, which if that's your opinion, that's fine. I just think we have a little recency bias and everything, and seeing CJ Stroud in the playoffs, we just think Caleb Williams is this for sure thing. And I think we're forgetting that this is not an easy decision for Ryan Poles by any means. And I think it's a harder decision for Poles to feel like he can move on from Justin Fields than it is. I think people are discrediting how much they actually really like Justin and how they have to be moved off of him in order to draft someone else. It's not like maybe we like him, maybe we don't. It's we have to like someone enough to say goodbye to someone we truly like love in this locker room.
Yeah, I mean, if they're gonna continue to, like, as teammates are gonna continue to pound the table for him, let's not forget, and I'm not saying this is like gonna make a decision one way or another, because this thing is gonna go all the way up to the draft. I don't think it's the same situation as last year where Poles is going to try to make a trade if he decides he wants to make a trade before the combine, because I'm not so sure that an established player needs to be in this particular trade package. He might like that to be the case, like I was talking about on our podcast last week. Let's say Atlanta wants to move up and include like Drake London in the package. Shoot, I mean, I would take that in a heartbeat depending on what else was part of the deal, but who knows, they want to move on from a guy like that. So I don't think that necessarily has to be part of it, like the DJ Moore trade last year. I think this thing could go well up right to draft day. And the point I was trying to make was, let's not forget, guys, this is the same team when George Halas is around in the 80s when they decided to draft or to fire the head coach and hire Mike Ditka. The players all wrote a letter to George Halas saying, please, the defensive players, please do not fire Buddy Ryan. We want Buddy Ryan to still be here. And he said, He walked in the locker room from what I remember. He walks in the locker room and he shows the letter to the players and he says, guys, I've never been more proud than I am right now. And he kept Buddy Ryan. So let's not forget the importance of the players and their support of their teammates. And if, they're going to, go to bat for this guy at all costs, and you don't feel like they're going to do that for Caleb Williams or one of the other quarterbacks, again, to me, it's kind of an obvious decision to make. But we don't know that. We don't know that they're going to feel that way. Sorry, team.
No.
And I know you guys do have to go soon because we're going a little overtime. So I'll let you, Tim, respond to that. And then if you guys want to add anything else before you guys have to go, then feel free to talk away. But Tim, I'll let you finish here too.
No, and I was just, either direction they go, it's going to be a tough. There was a comment on here, I think it was by Mark, and he said if Poles moves on from Justin, he better be right. And you know what? I agree, but at the same time, if he doesn't move on from Justin, he better be right then too, because either way, you're looking at his job here in the next couple of years. If this doesn't work out, Ryan Poles is probably getting fired, especially if he doesn't take a quarterback in this draft, because then he's had 2 chances at a quarterback and did not take one. Those things don't usually pan out very well for GMs. So again, it's hard to tell the scenario. And again, I'm not saying that that's the wrong choice. I think keeping Justin is the right choice, but at the same time, it's either way, it's a tough decision because you better be right either way.
I think at least in that scenario though, I think either way, if whatever decision you make doesn't work, everyone's fired and then we're starting all over again. But I do think the one benefit you have if you keep Justin is if you trade the number 1 overall pick, you have a bunch of talent added around the roster that I don't know if that saves you your job, but it definitely makes plugging in a better quarterback easier than it would be if you draft number 1 overall, quarterback doesn't work out, and you also, Justin Fields goes out and plays well, shoot, you really screwed up, which either way sucks. But I think in that situation, at least you have the talent you get from the draft to lean back on.
Well, I would just say, and I've made this point, I'll make this our last point too. I said this on our pod either the last week or a couple weeks ago, that, even if it doesn't work out, let's say we don't make the playoffs, Justin Fields doesn't play like we want him to, and they end up having to move on after the season. If they end up keeping him this year, let's say they stick with him this offseason, they don't draft a quarterback, it doesn't work out. I don't necessarily think that Poles is getting fired. Eberflus is probably getting fired, but Poles, I don't necessarily think would get fired in that scenario, because here's the thing is if they decide that they're going to stick with Justin, they're almost for sure going to move down. And if not at number 1, then at number 9. And there's a possibility, in my opinion, that they could move down from both spots, from 1 and 9. And if they do that and accrue 2 extra first-round picks next year, you're talking about 3 first-round picks to use as ammunition to go get a quarterback next year if things don't work out. Now, maybe it's not number 1, but it could be. Maybe you have high enough capital, you could move up to number 1 with those 3 first-rounders and get that quarterback. So it just depends. It depends on the situation. It depends on who's there. But again, just because it doesn't work with Fields doesn't mean that Poles could not still stick this thing out by making good decisions in the draft. So if he moves down and accrues extra capital and has another chance at it next year and it doesn't work with Fields, then he might still have his job.
I agree. And I think that's the point that's been missing in a lot of media. And we could be way off with that. Maybe people sit and listen to us and you guys are crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. But I do think there's truth to that if you have the draft capital and you have the players around the team, if the quarterback doesn't work out, at least you have the team. At least you have the personnel. If you get the quarterback and you don't use those, and yes, there's free agency and everything else, but we only have so much money, guys. If we can't get a bunch of rookies, young people, we're getting some, not old people, but we're getting a little bit older talent, people who've been around the league in free agency. So it's not like it's really the same. You're not getting the same amount of talent either way. You are getting a trade-off by taking quarterback number 1 overall than you would be trading the pick and getting a bunch of rookies. So it's definitely 2 different scenarios that a lot of pros and cons, a lot of offseason to talk about it all. Lord knows there's going to be hot Bears QB debates going on for the next 5 months, because even when we draft a quarterback, or we don't draft a quarterback, whatever the decision is, it's not going to end there. So we're in for a long journey, but I appreciate you guys coming on and talking Bears with me, and I'm sure I'll have you on again probably before the draft because we got a lot to talk about, and I'm sure there's going to be more news when we hire a QB coach, a wide receiver coach, and defensive coordinator. We got a lot more positions to fill here before we're done. So anything else you guys like to add before you go?
No, I appreciate you having us on, though, Alexis. Good luck with the rest of the show. And yeah, it's going to be an exciting next few weeks for sure.
Yeah, thank you guys for being on. I hope you have a good rest of your night. Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Talk soon.
All right, guys. So that was the guys from the Willis Twin Towers. I appreciate them being on. If you haven't seen their podcast, please go check them out. They have a really good podcast over on the Barroom Network. The Barroom Network also has a bunch of other good shows on there that you might have already seen. I do have a playlist in this YouTube channel that has a playlist of all the podcasts I've been a guest on. So if that does pique your interest, then you can go ahead and check that out down below. Well, not down below, but in the playlist of my YouTube channel. But I did just want to throw out some things here quickly to recap the hiring of Shane Waldron from the Seattle Seahawks. Here's a little quote here from the Draft Sharks. We have Ton Pelissero reports that the Bears are finalizing the deal. Waldron spent the past 3 seasons as Seattle's OC, finding particular success in passing efficiency. The Seahawks finished those years ranking 9th, and 6th in pass offense DVOA. That span covered QB Russell Wilson's injury, interrupted his final Seattle campaign, and then Geno Smith's first 2 seasons as a QB when he came to Seattle. And that was 32-year-old Geno Smith, by the way, who was labeled as a bust. So he definitely has plenty of experience, and he has a reputation and a record showing that he is an efficient offensive coordinator. We also do have this chart here showing the top 10 offensive coordinators. And would you look at that? Shane Waldron at number 4 per Sam Manson. Now, this is obviously kind of opinion-based, but based also on production and stats. That's a pretty dang good OC when you look at the people ahead of him. Ben Johnson, Kellen Moore, Bill O'Brien. And then, oddly enough, you got Matt Nagy down there at number 8, but I'm sure having Patrick Mahomes helps a little bit with that. But it's definitely a good OC hire for the Bears. I think when you look and everyone said, what OC would want to come to a lame duck coach? And I kind of combated that, and I said, I don't think it's a lame duck coach. I think the Bears think they found something in Matt Eberflus. And I also think this is the dream scenario for any OC. You either get to work with Justin Fields and be the guy that built him up with adding a bunch of talent around him on top of the talent you already have, or you get to develop the new rookie quarterback from this new top rookie draft prospect. So either way, and the Bears were a 7-win team last year. They have a defense that's on the rise to being one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL. Like, you have a team fighting for a division title potentially next year, hopefully. So like, this is a very good situation for an offensive coordinator. And someone like Shane Waldron, he's doing like a lateral hire essentially. He is an offensive coordinator, and he's going to be one again here. And I think as Bears fans, we're a little jaded in how great of a market Chicago is. Chicago Bears are one of the historic franchise teams of the NFL. And if you get to come here to a team that's never had a quarterback, whether that's Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, Drake May, no matter who it is, if you come here and you get this team a quarterback and you get this team to another Super Bowl, you will have a statue next to Walter Payton in about 2 years. So I just think I think this is a great situation no matter who the OC is. But now we know it is Shane Waldron, and I'm super excited. I'm very curious to see who the QB coach ends up being and who the wide receiver coach ends up being, because the wide receiver coach is another really important one. Lord knows we got DJ Moore, but we also had Darnell Mooney, who had 1,000-yard seasons, and he was barely used. And yeah, some of it you can maybe blame on Fields for not seeing him open, but about 90% of it which that happens to every quarterback, okay? So we're not going to dramatize Fields missing Mooney sometimes. Like, we had a play caller that could not scheme open his wide receivers. Just look at the plays. When you look at the Packers play, look how many wide receivers or tight ends are just wide open on the field because Matt LaFleur schemes them open. And then go and watch some Bears tape and see how many routes we have going to the exact same position on the field. Where is the quarterback supposed to throw to if all three wide receivers are standing in the same spot? So I just think that the wide receiver coach is also going to be a very big, important hire to see how this team comes full circle. But I will say I really like seeing that Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus, Kevin Warren, they're not messing around. You know, they had a specific system, a specific scheme they want to stick to, and they stayed in it. And they have specific people they're looking at, and they want those people. So I really like that about this hiring so far. I also like that it's within the same tree. It's within the same system. So if they do decide to keep Justin Fields, yes, he will have to learn a new playbook, but it should be similar terminology. Some of the plays will have similar-ish designs to them. They'll just be run a little bit more efficiently. The personnel will be a little bit different, but it's not going to be a whole new system Justin Fields would have to learn. Same with the other offensive players. You know, everyone on this offense is going to be learning a new system. But luckily when it's new scheme, but when it's in the same system, it's much easier to transition over. So that's also a real smart move by the Bears if they plan to keep this continuality, which is a big word that Kevin Warren preached in that presser, something they really want to keep going into next season to sustain success. And you listen to the Lions and what the Lions did, and they said, like, we're not going to turn everything over so quickly. We're not going to do that. They got Jared Goff. And, okay, I want to know what Bears fans are telling me that Jared Goff can get the Lions potentially to a Super Bowl, but Justin Fields can't. And I know this is an extraordinary circumstance where we have the number 1 overall pick and Caleb Williams is there, and he may be generational, but he also may not. He also may be a bust. Probably not. But also, the chances of it being the next Patrick Mahomes are also pretty slim. There's been plenty of other quarterbacks since Patrick Mahomes has come into the league that have been compared to Patrick Mahomes. Like, every year, they're overhyped. And I'm not saying Caleb Williams can't become an all-star quarterback. I'm just saying I don't like that we've suddenly shifted into this being like a sure thing, or we know for sure his floor is at least where Justin Fields is at now. I don't think that's true at all. We haven't seen Caleb Williams play a single NFL snap, and I think we're all enamored by what CJ Stroud has done, that we kind of just assume Caleb Williams could come in and do the same thing. Chances are he won't. Like, I'm not trying to be the Debbie Downer, but the chances that Caleb Williams comes in and has the exact same season as CJ Stroud and takes us to the playoffs, he has a better shot because hopefully the roster will be even more improved in the offensive line and have everything Justin Fields never had and a better play caller. So there is a chance, but he probably won't have a record season like CJ Stroud did, especially not with his style of play. There's going to be bumps in the road. It's very similar to Justin Fields'. Like, if Caleb Williams comes in, he's going to have some bumps in the road in the way he plays his game. That's going to have some bad interceptions. He has a big fumbling issue too, guys. Like, let's not forget that. He's going to have some fumbles. He's going to have some sacks he shouldn't be taking. Like, his style of play isn't like CJ Stroud's straight drop back passer. So he's going to have some issues here, just like Justin Fields had as a rookie. So I don't know. I just don't like the narrative that he's for sure going to have a high floor. And the other thing to consider is this Bears team is competing for the playoffs next year. So if we regress because we draft a rookie quarterback, fine, sure, you can make the argument it's for the future of the franchise. But what about everyone else on contracts on this team? What about the playoff window for some of these people who are on 3-year deals, 4-year deals, 1-year deals? Like, these people are playing for their contracts, but also Ryan Poles is evaluating these people for a playoff contending team. And the chances are we don't go to the Super Bowl next year, but we at least want to be making the playoffs. We need to show improvement. We need to have a Lions-like turnaround, especially looking at how good this division is. We don't have time to be slow. Guys, I don't know if you've noticed, but the NFC North might be the strongest division in the NFL next season. We don't have time to be a slow developing team. We simply don't. we have to hit the ground running next year, and we have to be fighting for the divisional title next year. And I think we can if we play our cards right. And who knows? That could be with Caleb Williams. That could be with Justin Fields. I just don't think everything is as clear, copy and paste as it's been made out to be. But obviously, getting the OC hire right is a very good start. And I think good things are ahead. We just have to keep chugging along here and keep living with the QB debate until that draft in April. And even then, it's going to be a long off season. But let me scroll through some comments here quickly before we end. Let's see here. Legion Smokey, and he has the opportunity to potentially work with Marvin Harrison Jr. Agreed. That's going to be a huge addition. And like we already mentioned in the podcast, with the draft picks you have, you could always trade that number 9 pick up, or if you trade the number 1 pick down, you could trade down to number 3 with New England, let them go number 1, and draft Marvin Harrison at number 3 and add in a few draft picks in the middle. So obviously that's assuming the deal gets made, right? I'm making a hypothetical scenario here, but it's an entirely possible one. So I just think there's a lot more options you have of adding talent to your roster, and a lot more options you have of who that talent is by trading the pick. But then if you use the number 1 pick, you have to decide, are we using the number 9 pick on a wide receiver and settling for maybe 2 second round picks and then a 3rd round pick, and that's it? Or what are we going to do? Or are we trading the number 9 pick back and not drafting one of the top wide receivers and getting it a few picks later? I don't know. There's a lot of different scenarios Ryan Poles is running through in his head right now. Great point. Thank you. I wonder if JJ is waiting to see what we do with Justin before he signs an extension. I don't think so. I think they know that the quarterbacks coming in could be good. I do think in someone like JJ's situation, though, he definitely wants to be somewhere that's winning now. So in the scenario where a rookie comes in, I think he's seen enough rookie quarterbacks to know what happens. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's something he's maybe doubting, heck, I don't know if I'm going to be in the playoffs with this team if we have another rookie quarterback. Not in my time here. But who knows? Maybe that's not his thought process at all. The Bears need to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. I would love that. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen, guys. But CJ Stroud did not go pick 1. He went pick number 2. But I just think it's going to be obviously we all know it's going to be a wild offseason, but I think the decisions are not as black and white as they seem to be with the media right now. And like I said, even with just when you evaluate the different draft scenarios, there's so many scenarios going in Ryan Poles' head, so many. And there's a good chance he drafts Caleb Williams. There's a chance he drafts Drake May. No one's talking about Drake May. We're going to talk about all of them in another episode where we break down the quarterback decision and the quarterbacks that we have as options, including Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, Drake May, and maybe even a few others. But there's also the real chance they keep Fields and trade the number 1 pick down a bit, trade the number 9 pick down a bit, and they draft a quarterback a little bit later in the first round as a backup. Who knows? All I know is it's not easy decisions to be made there at Hallis Hall. And I'm very, as much as everyone else, I'm just biting my nails waiting to see what the decision is. But luckily, that means we have a lot of content to talk about here on the podcast. So I will end this podcast here for tonight. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and comment. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think the Bears are going to do at the QB. Let me know what your thoughts are on the OC hire. And I really appreciate everyone joining these lives. If you subscribe, you'll get the notification when I'm live so that you don't miss it. And I just really appreciate you all for joining. And we're slowly growing here on this YouTube channel and on Twitter and everywhere else. So I appreciate you all for tuning in. I appreciate the guys at the Willis Twin Towers for joining. If you haven't checked them out, like I said, please do, over at the Barroom Network. But We have a lot to dive into. We have a lot more Bears talk to have. So tune in for the next live episode coming up in the next few days, next week. And have a good rest of your night, everyone. And as always, bear down.